And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for.
The royal palace was thrown into chaos after a disturbing overnight incident reportedly involving Princess Anne confronting Queen Camilla's son after an alleged breach near a highly restricted vault area. Insiders say the situation escalated fast, with tensions spreading through the corridors as whispers of a serious security breach began circulating among staff. Conflicting versions of events started appearing almost immediately, with some claiming leaked surveillance footage existed while others insisted everything was being tightly controlled behind palace walls. What made things worse was the sudden silence from official palace channels, which only fueled deeper suspicion that something sensitive had taken place inside restricted royal grounds. Some believe the monarchy may be hiding a far bigger issue than what is being publicly admitted, while others argue the entire situation may have been exaggerated by rumour and panic inside the palace. The truth remains unclear, but speculation continues to build as unanswered questions pile up. The incident reportedly began around 2 a.m. when security systems inside the palace suddenly triggered alerts deep within a restricted vault corridor. Motion sensors detected movement during an active lockdown, immediately putting security teams on high alert and forcing a rapid internal response. At first, officers assumed it was a system error, since older palace sections are known to occasionally trigger false alarms due to aging equipment and sensitive access systems. However, that assumption quickly collapsed when electronic logs confirmed movement in a corridor that should have been fully sealed off until morning. Security personnel rushed to check live camera feeds, expecting a routine explanation such as maintenance activity or authorized inspection. Instead, footage allegedly showed Tom Parker Bowles, son of Queen Camilla, moving alone inside the restricted hallway just before the alert was triggered. This revelation reportedly shocked overnight staff, not only because of his presence, but because there was no immediate explanation for how access was granted. Confusion spread quickly as supervisors began reviewing authorization records and security clearance logs to understand how the breach occurred. Some staff members speculated that temporary clearance might have been issued through internal channels linked to the royal household, while others strongly rejected the idea. The vault corridor is known to store sensitive royal archives, historical documents, and private materials connected to generations of the monarchy. Even experienced staff, reportedly, had limited knowledge of what was stored beyond those secured doors, adding to the seriousness of the situation. An urgent report was reportedly sent to Princess Anne, who was immediately informed of the unusual activity captured on surveillance systems. Sources say she reacted quickly and demanded a full explanation before sunrise, showing her strict stance on discipline and royal protocol. Her arrival reportedly intensified pressure on already overwhelmed security teams trying to piece together fragmented information. Guards continued reviewing multiple camera angles to determine whether anyone else had been involved or assisted in the alleged entry. Some staff feared the situation could expose broader weaknesses in palace access control systems, potentially triggering a wider internal investigation. Others were more concerned about possible media exposure if details of the incident leaked outside palace walls. By sunrise, what began as a routine security alert had escalated into a full internal crisis involving restricted access and unanswered questions. The focus quickly shifted from whether entry occurred to why it happened and who authorized it. Tension increased further as senior officials began questioning whether insider involvement could not be ruled out. The uncertainty created a growing sense of distrust among departments inside the palace. Questions multiplied rapidly about who had access to security codes and whether protocols had been bypassed. Princess Anne reportedly arrived at the palace before sunrise, where the atmosphere inside security offices had already turned tense and unstable. Staff members were speaking in hushed tones, while senior aides moved urgently between restricted sections of the building. Reports of Tom Parker Bowles near the vault corridor had spread quickly, turning confusion into full concern among officials. The footage alone raised alarms, But the bigger fear was whether someone inside the system had enabled access. Princess Anne reportedly ordered all movements near the restricted wing to stop immediately while a full review was launched. Security checkpoints were reinforced and electronic access logs were frozen for examination. Several officers were called into closed-door meetings as investigators tried to reconstruct the timeline of events. Witnesses claimed she appeared visibly frustrated while reviewing surveillance footage and questioning security response delays. She reportedly challenged staff over why emergency protocols were not triggered sooner. Conflicting explanations from different departments only deepened the confusion surrounding the incident. Some officers insisted that internal clearance may have been granted, while others said such access would have been impossible without raising alarms. The lack of a consistent explanation fueled suspicion that something deeper may have gone wrong within internal security systems. Attention soon turned toward the possibility of insider involvement or procedural failure. The vault corridor was not an area anyone could easily enter without multiple layers of authorization. As rumors spread through staff areas, anxiety began to grow about a potential internal scandal. Some feared the monarchy was preparing damage control before any official details became public. Tom Parker Bowles had not issued any public explanation regarding his alleged presence near the restricted area. That silence only intensified speculation among staff already under pressure. By the end of the morning, Princess Anne had positioned herself at the center of the unfolding investigation. What started as a security concern was now developing into a deeper issue involving trust and internal accountability. Questions emerged about whether palace security systems had been compromised or mismanaged over time. As scrutiny increased, officials began considering whether weaknesses in record-keeping had gone unnoticed for years. The situation continued to escalate behind closed doors as investigators worked to determine what truly happened inside the vault corridor that night. That possibility sparked rising discomfort among senior palace officials already under pressure over public trust in the monarchy system, and the tension inside the building only escalated fast. As the inspection deepened step by step, opinions inside the royal inner circle started splitting even harder, creating visible friction between departments and advisors. Some officials insisted the missing records were nothing more than administrative confusion mixed with fear-driven assumptions, while others quietly believed the situation pointed to long-ignored structural issues inside the royal household that had been buried for years. What started as a strange and unexplained appearance in a restricted corridor quickly turned into something much more disturbing, trapping palace officials between defending the monarchy's reputation and facing questions they could no longer dodge. Concerns were spreading fast through palace corridors, but what unsettled insiders most was Princess Anne's reaction, which reportedly carried serious weight and urgency. Was there a chance critical royal documents were wiped or erased on purpose? Did someone interfere with records before investigators arrived on site? And why were senior aides suddenly avoiding private meetings as security teams uncovered something unexpected deep inside the vault area? The atmosphere inside the palace was shifting fast, and silence was becoming more suspicious than answers. Royal tensions behind closed doors started escalating as Queen Camilla reportedly pushed for strict containment of the situation before it exploded into a public scandal. Senior aides were allegedly instructed to keep discussions of the overnight incident strictly within controlled meetings, while everyday conversations inside the palace shifted away from the vault itself and toward fear of media exposure. For many insiders, the concern was no longer just about Tom Parker Bowles, allegedly being seen near a restricted zone around 2 o'clock in the morning. It was about what would happen if surveillance footage or inventory issues became public knowledge. Camilla reportedly believed the monarchy could not survive another controversy tied to privilege, secrecy, and internal conflict, and she pushed hard for damage control. She is said to have argued that public attention would only fuel speculation, turning a contained issue into a nationwide scandal faster than anyone could control. Some officials agreed and wanted everything kept private until verified facts were confirmed, but others warned that secrecy could backfire badly if leaks eventually surfaced outside palace walls. At the center of this growing pressure stood Princess Anne, who allegedly refused to treat the incident as something that could simply be brushed aside. Sources claimed Anne believed the breach demanded a full and serious investigation, no matter how uncomfortable the outcome might be for the royal institution. That disagreement reportedly triggered increasingly tense exchanges between palace officials, with meetings becoming sharper, colder, and more divided each day. King Charles was reportedly caught in the middle, stuck between two powerful forces pulling in opposite directions inside his own family. On one side stood Camilla, focused on protecting the monarchy from another damaging headline storm, and on the other stood Anne, firm and uncompromising in her demand for accountability. Charles reportedly tried to ease tensions and keep conversations controlled, but his efforts satisfied neither side, leaving the situation unresolved and fragile. Discussions also emerged about whether surveillance footage tied to the vault incident should remain sealed from public access or tightly restricted. Some advisors feared that releasing or even leaking the footage could ignite rumors about missing records, favoritism, and hidden internal activity linked to high-level family connections. Others argued that hiding evidence could make the situation far worse if details eventually leaked through unofficial channels, damaging trust even more. This internal disagreement exposed a deeper fear inside the institution: how quickly public trust could collapse when transparency is questioned. Behind palace doors, staff reportedly sensed the environment turning heavier, more suspicious, and increasingly divided with every passing day. Employees feared the monarchy was sliding into another internal crisis that could dominate media coverage for weeks or even longer. Rumors began circulating that some aides were already blaming each other for communication breakdowns and security failures linked to the overnight event. The palace no longer appeared united, and the control over the narrative was slipping fast. What started as a routine security alert had now become a full internal struggle over loyalty, reputation, and authority within the royal structure itself. The vault incident was no longer isolated. It was exposing deeper cracks that had been hidden beneath the monarchy's polished public image for years. With Camilla pushing for containment and Anne demanding full investigation, the question inside palace walls became more dangerous. What exactly was being protected, and who was really making the final decisions? And with King Charles stuck in the middle, pressure continued building around what line would be crossed next inside the royal power structure. Meanwhile, leaked footage reports triggered an immediate shift in the situation once claims surfaced that parts of the overnight surveillance material had reached journalists and online commentators. Until that moment, officials had been struggling to contain everything internally, carefully debating how much information should remain hidden from public view. But once details connected to the vault incident began circulating online, control over the narrative collapsed almost instantly. By sunrise, media outlets, television discussions, and online royal forums were openly questioning why Camilla's son was allegedly seen near one of the most restricted palace zones during the night hours. According to insiders, panic spread quickly inside the communications team as staff scrambled to track coverage and prepare responses in case more footage appeared. Some advisors pushed for silence, hoping the story would fade without official confirmation, while others warned that silence would only intensify suspicion. As screenshots and descriptions of the footage spread online, speculation around Tom Parker Bowles grew more intense and more chaotic. Online discussions ranged from theories about sensitive documents and private correspondence to speculation about missing inventory records connected to the vault system. Others suggested there could be a harmless explanation buried beneath all the noise, but the absence of any official statement only fueled further theories. Former palace staff and observers also began commenting publicly, raising concerns about how security protocols inside royal residences were actually managed. Some suggested restricted access zones depended too heavily on trust-based systems rather than strict modern enforcement, adding pressure to an already unstable situation. Inside the palace, frustration grew as officials tried to identify who leaked the footage in the first place. Some believed it was an intentional leak from a concerned insider, while others suspected deeper internal divisions where competing factions were now using media exposure as leverage. Princess Anne reportedly viewed the leak as confirmation that the situation could no longer be handled quietly. At the same time, Camilla was said to be increasingly concerned that ongoing exposure could permanently damage both her family's reputation and the monarchy itself. As pressure intensified, the Vault controversy transformed from a private investigation into a full public scandal driven by secrecy, uncertainty, and rising suspicion. Questions spread rapidly. Who released the footage? And what exactly are officials trying so hard to control? Was this internal betrayal, or a carefully timed move designed to destabilize the palace from within? Further investigation then shifted focus toward hidden access systems inside the palace archives. Authorities began asking how many individuals actually had clearance to enter restricted vault-linked areas connected to royal records. What initially looked like a single overnight breach started revealing deeper concerns about internal access, privileges, security layers, and the structure of confidential record management. According to sources, security teams began reviewing years of access logs tied to vault corridors and nearby archive rooms, searching for patterns, anomalies, and possible unauthorized entries that could explain the growing mystery. The internal review reportedly intensified its focus on identifying exactly who held authorization privileges inside the palace system, how those permissions were originally granted, and whether certain individuals had managed to bypass oversight procedures unnoticed for an extended period of time. What made the situation even more alarming was the growing suspicion among insiders that the entire security structure had become overly dependent on trust-based decisions, informal approvals, and verbal arrangements instead of strict, traceable accountability systems that should have been enforced at every level. Some officials privately warned that this type of informal system becomes especially dangerous in environments where access is influenced by proximity to the royal family, because loyalty and personal relationships can easily blur the boundaries of official protocol and security enforcement. At the same time, outside discussions about the monarchy began expanding rapidly as royal historians, commentators, and former palace advisors started publicly speculating about what types of materials are normally stored inside high-level restricted vault systems. Although official access details remain tightly controlled and classified, experts explain that such archive sections often contain extremely sensitive historical documents, sealed royal correspondence, legal agreements, succession records, and private family materials preserved across generations of monarchy governance. These explanations, instead of calming public curiosity, actually fueled even more speculation, as online communities quickly began connecting historical possibilities with current rumors surrounding the Vault incident. Attention increasingly shifted toward whether Tom Parker Bowles may have been searching for something specific during his alleged presence near the restricted corridor at around 2 o'clock in the morning. Rumors involving sealed royal correspondence became especially difficult for palace officials to manage, as every new online discussion added another layer of suspicion, confusion, and narrative expansion. Some commentators began questioning whether private family letters, confidential exchanges, or sensitive documents connected to earlier royal controversies could potentially be stored inside the restricted archives, while others strongly warned that these theories were becoming dangerously exaggerated without any factual confirmation or verified evidence. Still, the complete silence from Buckingham Palace only worsened the situation, because in the absence of official clarification, speculation filled every informational gap almost instantly and continuously. Every unanswered detail created a chain reaction that triggered even more theories about what the monarchy might be trying to protect behind closed doors, and the pressure surrounding the investigation continued rising without any signs of slowing down. Meanwhile, Princess Anne reportedly became increasingly distrustful of certain palace insiders as the investigation progressed step by step. According to multiple reports, she allegedly grew concerned that some officials were prioritizing reputation management and damage control over uncovering the full truth behind the overnight vault access incident. That belief reportedly created a growing divide between investigative teams and senior aides responsible for communication strategy, internal messaging, and public narrative control. Anne allegedly believed that someone within the institution already possessed far more knowledge about what happened that night than they were openly admitting, and that suspicion made every internal meeting more tense, more cautious, and more politically charged. As pressure mounted further, Tom Parker Bowles also found himself increasingly placed under scrutiny as questions about his presence in the restricted corridor continued circulating without pause or resolution. While his representatives reportedly maintained that no illegal activity had taken place, critics argued that the lack of a clear, detailed explanation only intensified public curiosity and made the situation significantly harder to control. The absence of transparency kept the entire controversy locked in place, refusing to fade even as palace officials attempted repeated efforts to stabilize the narrative environment. By this stage, the situation had clearly evolved far beyond a simple security incident and had transformed into a much deeper institutional crisis involving secrecy, access control systems, and long-protected royal archives. What frightened palace officials most was the growing possibility that the vault itself could contain information capable of damaging far more than just public reputation, potentially affecting internal trust structures, historical legitimacy, and family relationships within the monarchy itself. Questions multiplied rapidly across every level of discussion. Who truly has access to these protected spaces? Why are so many names suddenly appearing in the investigation? And what exactly is being concealed inside sealed royal records? And perhaps the most troubling question of all, who made the decision that certain truths should remain permanently locked away from public scrutiny? The secrecy surrounding the situation felt heavier with each passing day, and internal pressure within the palace continued rising without any clear resolution in sight. A crown divided by midnight secrets was no longer just a dramatic phrase. It was beginning to reflect the actual emotional and political atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace itself. By the final phase of the royal vault controversy, internal tensions had reportedly escalated to a point where divisions within the royal family could no longer be hidden from staff, advisors, or even long-serving officials. What began as a single overnight security alert had expanded into a full-scale institutional crisis affecting multiple layers of the monarchy's operational and reputational structure. Palace officials were no longer simply reviewing surveillance footage or verifying inventory logs. They were now engaged in a far more serious struggle over accountability, public trust, and the long-term survival of the institution's credibility. According to insiders, Princess Anne continued to strongly push for a formal and transparent investigation into every detail surrounding Tom Parker Bowles and the restricted vault corridor incident. Sources claimed she believed the monarchy could not selectively avoid scrutiny simply because the individuals involved were connected to Queen Camilla's family, and that fairness demanded full accountability regardless of status, relationships, or internal hierarchy. Anne reportedly warned that any attempt to avoid transparency would only deepen public suspicion and create long-term reputational damage that could eventually become irreversible. Her position allegedly created significant frustration among certain officials who feared the situation was already escalating beyond institutional control and becoming increasingly difficult to contain. At the same time, Queen Camilla was reportedly working just as strongly in the opposite direction, attempting to prevent the situation from expanding into a wider public crisis that could destabilize the monarchy further. Those close to palace operations suggested she viewed the entire controversy as being heavily amplified by media speculation, online rumors, and rising internal panic among staff and advisors. Some aides allegedly supported her belief that continuing the investigation in a highly public manner could result in weeks of damaging headlines centered on secrecy, privilege, internal division, and royal conflict. Others, however, strongly feared that limiting transparency could backfire if information eventually leaked through unofficial or uncontrolled channels later on, causing even greater damage than the original incident. Caught directly between these opposing forces was King Charles, who reportedly struggled to maintain unity within both the royal family and the broader institutional structure. Sources indicated he attempted to calm tensions privately, encouraging restraint while trying to prevent emotional escalation during sensitive internal discussions behind closed doors. However, despite these efforts, stability reportedly remained fragile, and nearly every high-level meeting involving senior aides became increasingly tense, unpredictable, and difficult to manage. Disagreements continued spreading across multiple issues, including security failures, leaked footage concerns, internal responsibility, and the ongoing debate over how much information should ultimately be revealed to the public. Meanwhile, morale among palace staff reportedly continued to decline as the controversy disrupted normal operations and created a constant atmosphere of uncertainty and pressure. Employees who once trusted internal systems began questioning whether hidden influence, personal loyalty, networks, or private relationships had compromised fundamental security procedures inside the palace structure. Some feared the investigation could expose deeper institutional weaknesses that had quietly existed for decades without public awareness or internal correction. Others simply worried about being caught between powerful royal figures competing for control over the narrative, the investigation, and the monarchy's public image. Outside the palace, media pressure intensified on a near-daily basis without any signs of slowing down. Television broadcasts, newspaper outlets, and online royal commentators repeatedly demanded clear answers about what exactly happened inside the vault at precisely 2 o'clock in the morning. Each new rumor, theory, or alleged detail only added fuel to public fascination, making the mystery feel even larger, more complex, and more emotionally charged. Some observers believed the incident reflected deeper structural instability within the monarchy itself, while others insisted the entire controversy had been significantly exaggerated by speculation, secrecy, and lack of official communication. But regardless of interpretation, one fact remained undeniable. The palace's inability to provide a clear and consistent explanation was keeping the story alive and continuously expanding across every media platform. At the center of everything, the most critical question still remained unanswered. Why was Tom Parker Bowles allegedly inside one of the monarchy's most heavily restricted areas during the middle of the night? And who may have helped facilitate his access? Until those answers are finally revealed, the Royal Vault scandal continues to hang over Buckingham Palace like a persistent shadow that refuses to disappear, no matter how much effort is made to contain it. And now the question turns directly to the audience once again. Was Princess Anne right to demand full transparency and accountability? Or has the entire situation been amplified far beyond reality by speculation and secrecy? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let your voice be part of this unfolding mystery. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates, hidden details, and continuing revelations as this royal story develops further.